Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Lowman02. We're going to be going through a series of five matches today. The first three are really testing matches that I do with my friend SugarDaddy on mtgo. Really, what we're doing is he's looking to build a prison-based strategy that utilizes such one-time hits as like Winter Orb, Static Orb, Stasis, effects like that, plus Phyrexian Furnace, just basically draw engine cards or like Howling Mines, essentially to build a 100-card Singleton version of Turbo Stasis. So what we do, this is kind of the deck concept that he has in mind, and he spent some time working on it, and he's built a couple versions of it. What we end up doing is we go through in a three-match series. We test it against an aggro-based strategy, which in this case red deck wins. The control-based strategy, which I end up using Blue Moon for, and then a mid-range strategy, which I end up using like a stompy, like ramp style deck for. The last two matches are just two matches between myself and Stsung and also Tikhon, both of which are good players in the format and are just casual matches that we'll kind of go through and kind of cover. As I think Stsung's deck that she's running is more of a rogue style deck. It's a bug mid-range style deck, with like top ends of like Grave Titan, Primeval Titan, really just a decent mid-range deck. And then Tikhon is on like a Blue Moon variant. So we'll go over the testing here. So you can see the deck he's trying to work on, which is, like I said, is a prison build. Didn't really make them, so went 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 against our decks. But keep in mind, like these are more tuned versions of the deck. So this first one is just a red deck wins deck. As you can see, like our hand is stellar. We don't have burn in it. Which at one point I think he passed a Phantasmal Image, so if we'd never hit burn, it could have become a problem for us. But this hand right here is just going to close the door very quick on any sort of deck that is looking for specific components to assemble a soft lock on it. If it stumbles whatsoever, this hand just wins. And I think Undisordered this hand wins in like turn 4. It's really weird. So we do get disrupted a little bit with a blocker coming down, Phantasmal Image, I believe, on the Ash Zealot. We end up playing the Mutable out on turn early as we expected to play the Bogarden Ramgang, but we just, blow the lesser mana Scribe burn spell. We see a Howling Mine come down, and we think, are you crazy, man? You can't really cast that card against this deck. Yeah, as you can see, we end up killing them turn 5, but we have them down to 1. If we'd cast the Ramgang on turn, then this game would have been pretty handily over. But he plays a Shaper Savant, but it's frankly irrelevant at this point. So, I think a deck like this will never have a good matchup against a curve-based strategy like Mono Red, simply due to the fact that when you're playing cards like Howling Mine or like Phyrexian Furnace, or I think it's Bogarden Anvil or Bogarden Furnace, I forget what the card is, but essentially a card that has a Howling Mine-like effect. You're going to be in a tough way because they're generally going to be able to find ways to use their mana to still maintain a reasonable hand size and not discard the hand size. Whereas if you play a card like that against control, for them it's much more difficult because they're generally like a one land a turn style deck, and they also have a high volume of cards that are intended to be used on your turn, which is going to force them to discard a larger amount. So these cards are good against control, but they tend to be pretty poor against this style matchup. You can see kind of a stopping the first game. And some of the conversation between us is, I don't think this can ever really have a good matchup against this deck, which, is not, I think, generally a good place to be in 100-card Singleton, because I think, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bolt test. It's not something that really exists anymore, because most of the creatures have superseded having toughness 3 if they're competitive creatures, or a lot of them have, where relevant. But the Bolt test at one point in time was just a test used to measure the efficiency or the viability of play for a creature. Let me go ahead and turn the sounds off right quick, guys. Let's pause this up. And back at a certain point in time when creatures passed the Bolt test, they were deemed full in competitive play. And as you look at as you kind of look at decks in 100-card Singleton, I call it the Bolt test, and really is it can it go 5-0 against Mono Red? And if the answer is no, it may not be a viable deck. It may be depending on your meta. But I think you tend to want to have at least a 5-0 match against this deck. So we see the Stasis come out. He's got his, I wouldn't call this a soft lock. So like, the lock is really not complete. He's got one half of the lock. And really what this does is buys him a turn. But the unfortunate part about Stasis is that it allows me to untap first. With the active Tangle Wire in play, this works very much so against him. He's got a Tabernacle out, which is a cool combo piece. But we're not, we had one creature, well, one real creature in our hand. He's forced to give up the stasis at this point. Like I say, we untap, sack our 2 mountains to Fire Blast. I don't even think we wait for the Shrine of Burning Rage counter to go on. We just burn him out before the tap trigger off of Tangle Wire hits us. And that's game against red deck wins versus Shug's 5-color prison deck. So the next round we have significantly longer matches. And it's against essentially a control build. This is a Blue Moon versus his deck. I think one game goes relatively long. The other is a Moon effect deck, which I don't think 5-color can generally beat. So we get Thoughtseize, he hits the Lightning Bolt. Hey, cool. Got the Lightning Bolt, brother. Draw Memory Lapse is fine. As you see, this draw is very control heavy. And at some point in time, I believe we start getting a little choked on lands, because this deck generally wants to hit a land every turn. Or tries to, or wants to generally do that. It can play a little bit of mid-range, but it's hard. I think it's a control shell that has a combo built into it. So yeah, I believe we go for Volcanic Island here. We memory lapse this, kind of in the hopes of falking on his ability to fetch an additional land off Polluted Delta during our turn. But him having a Vendilion click in hand essentially shuts off our Desolate Lighthouse, or the ability of us to play our Desolate Lighthouse, because we don't want to start getting hit by a 3/3. We just don't really have a way to answer that, because if we end up doing that, he's going to get rid of the Magma Spray, and then we're left with 3 counter spells, 2 of which are very situational, and no answer to it, plus no threat of our own. So that thing could just run down the. As you see our draw plays down, I think it ended up being smart that we did that. I think it just run away with the game, just a 3/1 flyer. Vidalca Mastermind, fine. This is a stasis combo lock piece. If you're not familiar with the card, essentially all it is a 1/2 wizard that says tap it and tap a blue mana, and you can return any permanent that you own to your hand. Target permanent you control to its owner's hand. Why you would want to return a creature that had been treachery, for instance, I don't know. But it has that ability. So with stasis, you play the stasis out. It essentially acts as like a Pickles lock, if you're familiar with that, which I believe is what is the elemental's name? It's a tide elemental or something like that, or wave crash elemental. I forget, but it's a morph creature that combos with a morph shapeshifter. So I think it's a Vesuvian shapeshifter, something like that. But essentially, it basically makes the opponent never have another untap step. So if they're tapped out, then the game is over. You have essentially infinite time walks. It's a lot like, for instance, a Time Vault Voltaic Key lock, which is what he's hoping to do with this. But, I've got the Magma Spray in hand. I've got a lot of counter magic. This thing on its own is a 1/2, and unless he has Stasis or Winter Orb in play, or Static Orb in play, this thing does nothing. It hits me for 1 every turn. So whoop-de-doo. We'll take 1 in turn for a while. And even then, it's a little risky, because I do run a lot of flash creatures. So we brainstorm main here without a fetch, and we're kind of disappointed. We see just a bunch of more control magic, or not control magic, control spells on top of our deck. Including the Torrent Gearhulk, which it's probably the better draw of the deck. We're kind of hoping he'll so we see Kira, and we think, hey, let's counter this. We'll play some of our counter magic out, so we're not discarding next turn. See a V click. Now I think this is a more questionable play on his part. He knows we have the Complicate in hand. Actually, wait, no, does he? Yeah, he does know we have the Complicate in hand, because he thought he's just. Hit the Lightning Bolt as opposed to the Complicate. So we see Grand Arbiter, Augustine the 4th come down. We Torrent Gearhulk here, putting him on, no counter magic or controls in hand. Um, Counterspell that, have a 5/6 down, and just start threatening him with it. Um, I think he takes it the first time. I think the second time you'll see him use the Vidalcan Mastermind to like fog it essentially, which not a huge fan of. What you do when you do that is you run the risk of an instant speed removal spell getting the Vidalcan Mastermind, which I think is what you'll see ends up happening. Yeah, so he blocks, is gonna flip it, and then we electrolyze it. He Fencer Shaper Savants, and then we just yeah, we deprive here. Yeah, we couldn't miscalc or mana leak there just due to the Grim Monolith being in play. See a Tezzeret come out, and yeah, so we're pretty sure he's gonna get Winter Orb. We see Anvil of Borodin come down, which is fine by us. I mean, we'll draw more cards. It stinks to have a Tabernacle plus a Winter Orb in play, but Winter Orb doesn't force me to not, or does not disallow me from untapping creatures. So we're kind of still advantaged here. Like he is not in a place where he's winning this game right now. He needs to get something like a stasis in place so that my Torrent Gearhulk doesn't untap. Um, he tries to plagiarize here. We have to counter it. We're not going to let him draw like 3 or 4 cards and then discard a card after having drawn one. Before we start hitting him, because it would have dropped the clock if we'd hit him first with the Firebolt in hand. We take out the Tezzeret. The Tezzeret can get a bunch of 0 mana Moxen out of this deck, which I can't have at this point because if I let him have that kind of stuff, it'll untap every turn. Because Winter Orb will not affect his artifacts. We end up stealing his Mox Opal. We can't use it, but we want him off colored mana. We want him as low as possible on lands. We want this to have essentially a parallel effect on him. Probably a minor misplay on our part. We probably should have untapped a Mountain prior turn. If we had, we would have killed him. But this turn, we correct our mistake and hit him with 1/2 of a Firebolt plus the Chain Lightning to win the game on turn 19 of the game. So we was able to slow us down a lot. I never really felt like I could lose the game, if that makes sense. Game 2, a lot shorter game. It really comes down to the moon effects in this game. Yeah, we don't have a fixed hand as far as mana goes, but we have a preordained and we're pretty comfortable. We can get there. We keep both, if I'm not mistaken. Force Rule is not bad. So we see an Ancient Tomb come down and we're thinking in our heads, well, what does he have? It's an odd land to play first. And we see a Chrome Mox, so we figure, all right, he's got a very mana light hand, and I think what you end up seeing is he doesn't play a land this turn. We have to force a Will Bitter Blossom because honestly, cards like Bitter Blossom kind of beat this deck. Not a lot of answers to enchantments in this deck, and anything that allows you to geometrically increase damage against an opponent every turn, is pretty decent. But once we get the Magus down, we possibly fix him, but we put him down to 2 mana. He doesn't get a land drop off top. We have plenty of counter magic in hand. We have Critter Kill in hand, which may or may not be relevant depending on what he plays. But if I was a betting man, I would guess that we're probably going to go all the way just with the Magus. If we played nothing else this game and just attacked every turn, I think we'd probably win. Because in a 5-color deck, it's just you're not really that favored, especially on a land that was greedy and didn't have a land it needed to get there. It's going to be an uphill battle or very easily. So the last match we play is just a mid-range on this deck. And I believe it's just a Stompy build. Let's see. Yeah, so this is a Stompy build. So this is more of a Question Keep. We got nothing going on. We are a Dark Depths deck, though, and we have a lot of ways of finding lands. I think it has, like, Crop Rotation, Primeval Titan, and then the 2 mana one. I think it's Sylvan's Grind to find a land. So with Thespian Stage, we could easily just sack into like 3 or 4 cards. Well, 5 cards if you count the actual Dark Depths itself. That just instantly win us the game, or set up a condition where we're pretty much winning the game. And plus we have the Raging Ravine, which is essentially a threat. We managed to draw into some decent ones with Ravager of the Fells, and it's a tough time dealing with it. We're casting multiple spells, flipping it back and forth. At this point we have 8 power in play with a reflipped Ravager. Activate the Raging Ravine, and we're basically just playing mid-range at this point, even though this deck does have the ability to go kind of beyond that. And he really he doesn't have a hand that can punish any of what we're doing, which what we're doing is essentially fair. I think it's 100% fair. It's just we're playing fair mid-range, and if you're not dealing with one of these three archetypes, I think you either need to relook your builder. Maybe the archetype you're trying to build um, is viable, maybe not in the colors you're trying to do. So we pull in a lot of the land hate that we have. You can see one of our sideboard cards there, Dwarven Blast Miners, Maiden. I think we just play Explore here. I don't think we end up playing that out. A Haro, more than likely. Yeah, getting rid of the non-basic. I don't want it to get tech edge when I go up to 4. I want to stay on curve here. I do get a land off top. End up playing the Oracle of Moldiah. Bloodbraid on top, pretty strong. I can't remember. I think we end up going with we go with the Keranos, make the mana, play the Bloodbraid, hit the Firebolt. So interesting play there. We end up tossing out the natural order because we have a Titania plus a Fierce Empath in hand, so we can get we can get any drop we want out of the deck with Titania. Plus, we can make like tons of mana with Xenagos. So we happen just to luck into the prime time anyway. Our correction, no, we Fierce Empath into it, but we had enough mana off of the Xenagos plus the lands we hadn't played to get to it. Without Valagate here, I think we're just being kind of techy and cool here. I have to see if this ends up killing. No, it kills him at the same rate. We could have made the Merit Lage token because this is a Dark Depths deck, plus a Valakut, Scape Shift, and Primeval Titan deck. But it's really the same rate at which we kill him because, as you can see, we just have a massive swarm of creatures just beating down. So, not really the best, most interactive matches. I'm going to stop this one right here because that's game over at this point. But the reason I show these is because this is just an idea of how I tend to test with other people and how he does as well. We tend to take an archetype or a deck that is a deck that we think we'd enjoy playing, and we think we've built to 80 to 90%, and then we test it up against the different matchups that we expect to see in the format. And this is obviously a very simple testing session. Sometimes you can see that we played like 15 to 20 games in a row just to jam a deck or a deck idea or modifications to an existing deck through a series of a gauntlet of play. And this one was a little bit shorter, arguably, because he had to go back to the drawing board. I think when you see that your deck really doesn't feel like it has a hopeful chance of victory against aggressive decks, control decks, or mid-range decks, it's not per se good against anything in the format. And at that point in time, I'm not saying it never will be, but you probably need to relook at that point. So I mean, that was generally enough testing to say, general litmus test is this is unplayable right now. And he went back to it. And sure, I definitely hope to see that deck again. And I do think it is a very playable deck. I just think it's a difficult build for one. I don't think there's a lot of flexibility in it. And I'm not going to say I know what it is. I tend to think if you want to play Prison, the best way to do it is in the black-white colors. I think there's just a lot of hate in white. I think black generally tends to allow you to complement that hate with disruption of the hand, which I think is powerful. So, there's just some ideas on Prison specifically. I don't per se think Prison is phenomenal in our format. Well, really in our meta, because I don't think Prison is ever great against extremely aggressive decks. And I think it's about 45, 55 against mid-range. Where I think it is advantaged, at least the black-white version of Prison is in control. And we don't have a lot of dedicated control players. I would say for the most part, a lot of the decks that you see in the format are like, Green X good stuff decks, Green Ramp decks, and then aggressive strategies. So I don't know. I don't know if it's the best archetype to get into. I just don't think it's as unfair as some of the stuff you've done historically with reanimation effects. So we'll skip over these two matches with Michelle Wong. Michelle, apologies. Unfortunately, the ISP I'm working on in this hotel timed out, and then I had to go pick up my kid from school. So I apologize for cutting short our matches there. Did end up getting another match with Stsung tonight. She was on a more experimental deck, a bug deck that she's working right now. I believe we end up playing her with our Jeskai MachineShop deck, which is kind of, we're both playing kind of like, this is a newer deck to me. I've played it a couple times and you've seen it on my YouTube channel. I haven't done much tuning since I last played Michelle with it. It's a fun deck. I just have fun playing it, to be honest. It's kind of like, really it's a base green, or crush, I'm sorry, blue, red artifact deck. One's like Ready, Trash for Treasure, Goblin Welder. But it has, two combo outs in Painter Servant, Grindstone, and then, what is it called? The Sword of the Meek and the Thopter Foundry combo. Which I think they're both pretty powerful. I guess you could put the Riptide or the Helmline combo in there, which both are fine combos. It only runs those two though that I just previously specified, because I think when you start getting like 3 or 4 different 2-card combos, you start clunking up decks with a lot of junky cards that, outside of having the other card, just they don't really do it. Good old Forge Master comes down. She doesn't have an answer for it, and at this point, I feel like I'm pretty favored to win. Unless she ends up reanimating something just ridiculous, or just killing this thing before it loses summoning sickness. But we have the Painter Servant in hand, so right now we're only requiring one more card, which is the Grindstone, to combo her out. I think I misplay the turn that I called the Forge Master here. I think we end up taking it back to our turn, and what we're looking to do is draw an additional artifacts. We don't want to sack. We don't want to sack any of the artifacts you have on the table. I think I misclick here. Honestly, I should have kept the Cold Ortho Forge Master and gotten rid of the Gilded Lotus. I don't need all that mana. But we end up grindstoning. I believe she had some big, Cryptic Command. So we have the Pact in hand, as you can see. This resolves, and we eat her entire deck in one fell swoop. And that's the first game. So the second game, I think we get a little unfortunate. So we just run out of gas, and we see a lot of cards, but we just don't hit anything this hand. I say that you look through my hand, and maybe we cashed in the Fabricate too early in this game, and we should have held on to it a little bit longer. Happy to see Scrabbling Claws she has a decent reanimation package in this bug deck, and this is a card we did board in for this game. End up just playing out basics, so I guess we're playing around back to basics at this point if she even runs it. We Fabricate, get the Chrome Mox, and we end up playing the Claws out. And really what we're doing is we don't want to get the Claws on this turn. It's whatever, it's meh. We're really setting up to have a Bribery turn next turn. Because if we don't hit a land, I want a Bribery this turn. As you can see, it actually ends up, I'm not going to say it was a great play, but it ends up working out because she does play a Glenalandra without the ability to use it up. Which would have just completely made this play null and void the following turn. We're able to get a Primeval Titan, which, it eats removal, but we got 2 free lands out of it. We're going to slow her down really badly by just removing her lands. Wasteland, first main, force her to tap it for mana, and then go to the next. Factor Fiction. Believe we take the larger pile. So I believe she ends up attacking and then playing out an Obstinate Baloth here. And as you see, the game goes on for a few more turns, but these 2 cards just end up going the distance for her. They end up killing us. So maybe in retrospect, we end up playing out the Solemn, thin out the deck a little bit, put a blocker down, draw an additional card. Maybe we should have just cast the Engineered Explosives out there, and because we can cast it for 4 right now and blow up all the 4 drops on the board. Due to the Lotus Petal and the Gilded Lotus, we draw land off of the Solemn. We end up playing out the Pithing Needle, trying to shut down the Glenalandra. He feels obliged to counter it. We go for 4 here. Once we go for 4, he counters that with Glenalandra, which cool. So we're on a 3-turn clock at this point in time. We do have a mana leak to, get any shenanigans any larger shenanigans that may come down, like a Primeval Titan or something like that. We're never going to have land tax activate. It's just not going to happen. Draw another land. We're like, okay, give us a threat here. We get hit again by the Obstinate Baloth, and at this point we're kind of limited. So he ends up Vorath Strongholding his guy. Vorath Stronghold is a good card. It's powerful, but it stinks when you're this low on mana because you're kind of blanking your draw. We tithe just to pull more lands out of the deck. I'm sorry. So we end up running Preordain, put 2 lands on the bottom, then draw a tithe, and we're like, hey, I guess the game's over. So one of those games, you just have to draw gas. But I mean, even though we're 8 cards up on her, and we do run a decent amount of threats in the deck, not to mention like combo pieces and tutor effects, we just don't find anything. We just hit lands, land out, and that's the game. So game 3, decent hand. So we have Master Transmuter, which is a powerful card because we do run like cards like Inkwell Leviathan, Mere Battlesphere, Wormcoil Engine, Batterskull. Like we have some decent size threats. We don't run anything like super silly like what is it, Blightsteel Colossus or anything silly like that, or Darksteel Colossus. Just because those cards are so blah when you don't have a way of cheating them in. Whereas the other ones are castable. And actually, you'll see this game ends up getting to a point where we do cast them. So we get the Grindstone down in this game. I don't believe it becomes extremely relevant. Well, correction. Actually, it eventually does, but it's not in the way that you would think. We remand this just to draw a card. We don't want that thing. We're fine. We end up Swords to Plowsharing, the Goyf. We go for the Bribery again. End up taking the Primeval Titan again. Ramp ourselves up. I believe we get a Caracas and a Wasteland because if a card like she actually runs quite a few legendary creatures. So there's like Tassiger in there. I don't know if the new like Lavolt's in there, but she has quite a few, a decent number. So we just go for Caracas. We don't go for the Tech Edge. And the way we're kind of looking at it is if we need to get an additional land, we'll get the Tech Edge next time. I don't really care about Maze of Ith because I don't really, the funny thing is I feel like I have eventuality over her deck. Her deck's more of a mid-range deck. I don't really need to damage her with Primeval Titan. I mean, it's kind of a bonus. Really, what I like Primeval Titan for is it's just it's a 2-for-1. It's 2-for-0 every turn, pulling me 2 lands out of my deck. End up getting the 2 artifact lands here. It synergizes with stuff like Cold Forge Master, or if I get a transmute artifact or a reshape, I can just get rid of one of those things and get what I need. Very strong pull and oust. We end up putting her what's that card called? Whatever the 3/2 that ends up pumping itself off of Investigate or Clues every time a land comes into play. We end up putting that at 3rd from the bottom. I believe she shuffles that guy away. We start getting hit here. That's fine. We see Baleful Strix and we stop the attacks. So, what we're doing here is we've gotten up so high on land and we've found our Academy runes that we're actually using the Grindstone to essentially draw cards. We're dumping 2 to 3 off the top of our library every turn. Ideally on her end step, and then using the Academy runes to filter our draw. As you can see, we're putting stuff down like Wormcoil Engine and Inkwell Leviathan because we're able to filter what our draw is off of the Grindstone Academy runes combo. So it's kind of an interesting use of the card, and I think people will say oh, these cards are blanks most of the time, and yeah, I mean Grindstone is not. On its own, it's not a great card unless someone top tutors. I guess it's top tutor protection, which is something to keep in mind. But for us, when we have a card like Academy Runes in play, or I guess if you have a card like Borat Stronghold in play, it becomes a little more relevant whenever self mill is a thing you want to do. And this deck definitely doesn't mind self mill. It can use its graveyard. Not as much as a deck like Rexer that we're playing. Competitively in a few of our video matches, but it can use it, and you see it. We generate a lot of value off of Academy Runes with this deck. We're just bringing back Scrabbling Claws every turn because essentially it says draw an additional card every turn. And I think and plus she's a graveyard based, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking in my mind she's on 8 life. She's played this Obstinate Baloth. Hey, cool, whatever. But Inkwell Leviathan is most certainly actuality. It's irrevocably going to hit her every turn. It's almost impossible to kill. I mean, she'd have to damnation the board to kill it. And if she does, well, we have Academy Runes. I can't think of really a good card that would get rid of it here because she would need to exile. Yeah, I mean, outside of, ghost quartering her own island so she could block it every turn, and blocking it with like Baleful Stretch or something. You know, it's not really a card you can get around if you play islands in your deck. It's just there, and it's going to do what it does every turn, and it's going to beat you to death in 3 turns. So yeah, it ends up taking the game here. You know, a very fun game between myself and Sung. I think both these decks are more like second tier 100 card singleton decks. They both seem like they're fun to play though. Um, you know, I think hers could be better than mine. I think she's still kind of working on it. And like Jeskai MachineShop is just a fun deck I built kind of just for fun. I think Jeskai Control or Jeskai Twin I think is probably a better deck if you're going to play these colors. Machine Shop's fun too. You know, it has some of these like cool 2 card combos that can just win out of nowhere. It's a cool deck in its own right. So last match is between myself and Tikhon, and I believe this match we are playing the Rampscape deck. So we end up going with the Rampscape deck on this one. Tikhon is on a deck he commonly plays, which is a Blue Moon variant. I played on Valak at turn 1. I think we misplayed. Yeah, we do. We should have played our Taiga the second turn and cast the Farseek. I believe we ended up trying to go to correct ourselves, and hey, we would have been countered last turn probably anyways. That's fine. He's kind of on a counter anything that gets you ahead of me deck. We end up playing a Bloodbraid Alpha, which plays very well around 1-for-1, permission-based spells. We see a remand on the Mary's Guile, which I'm kind of curious about because, Mary's Guile, definitely fixes my draw. Like, I feel like you want to remand the larger mana spell, but then again, I'm getting 3 spells off of it as well. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Then again, that's why you play cards like Bloodbraid Elf, because it forces opponents that play permission into tough decisions. So here, I believe he ends up playing Mystic Confluence. It's a little more of a techie play. I end up playing out the Court of Calling, tapping on all my stuff to get a Thragtusk, because I think Thragtusk is a decent card against him. Thragtusk is one of those weird cards that is great against aggro, great against control, and decent mid range. It's just a good card, all around. There's not really a bad matchup for the card, so I end up just getting it because I'm like, hey, if you want to remove this thing with something like a Lightning Bolt, I'll get an additional 3/3. Then you have to remove that thing. We've seen Inferno Pad on top. We want to just keep on hitting lands though because this is a escape ship deck. And we have Valakut in play, and if we can put another mountain in there, it means we're basically 1 mountain away from making Valakut live. Once Valakut goes live, it's very hard for a deck that uses counter magic effects to beat land drops, for lack of a better term. So Valakut at this point is live. The next mountain we put into play, we'll do 3 damage to whatever we want it to. We see a Flame Slash, a dual claster Flame Slashing. So let me go over this series of plays. So he ends up removing all of this stuff. Just spends a bunch of cards out of hand, repeals. This is very aggressive. I think what he wants me to think here is that he has a counter spell up. But with how aggressively he did this, I think he feels like he doesn't have enough answers in hand to survive against the board state as it stands. So I think he takes this line because he figures if we don't have additional threats or capability to find threats in hand, he can win with the small team he's got on the board. I don't put him on counter magic at this point, though. I think this is a bluff. Well, I don't think it's a bluff. I think, you just randomly had the 2 mana left, and it kind of is a nice bluff. But the way he uses his cards, I'm thinking in my head, no, you're not on it, man. I think you had a draw that could do this, so you did it so you could start attacking me and end the game before I can do more powerful things. And as you can see, that kind of line, and that's also a little bit hidden information. I've played Tikhon before, and he's more assertive player. I think he tends to try to take more aggressive lines. So I ended up going for the Green Sun Zenith on Primeval Titan, and it works. He ends up, I think, gushing, and we get the Primeval Titan, get 2 additional mountains in play, dealing 6 to destroying the Voracious Reader, which is an interesting card. I've never seen that card played in 100 card singleton. I'm not saying it's bad. I actually think it's pretty cool. But I'd be curious to do playtesting with it before I gave you a prognosis on whether it's good or bad. I'm not sure. We get rid of that thing just because I want him to fully use his mana. I don't block here because I don't want something like a Char to blow me out. I want to kill him next turn. We search for tomorrow. With the Blood Moon in play, the Valakut's not live anymore. It's a basic mountain, so we just get a Florist out of the deck. Keep the fetch land off the top, just in case he's able to kill the Titan before attacks. Hull Breach to turn Valakut back on, play the fetch, attack him with Titan, find 2 mountains, and he concedes at that point in time, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Okay, so that is game 1. Game 2, we actually get to go after the namesake of the deck. We do get escape shift in this one. So some of the board goods come in against this matchup. So, I actually was having a conversation with Stsung. We were playing the Death and Taxes on Blue Moon. There's a few unfavorable matches for Blue Moon. And actually, I think that Stompy is one of the few mid-range matchups that actually tends to be rather bad for it. And really, it's because of the board hate that this style of deck is capable of playing against a Blue Moon deck. And you see a big piece of it, Choke, is in my hand. He also have cards like City of Solitude, Price of Glory, Vexing Shusher, the Blasts, like Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, stuff like that. I think we brought Brandon, which is just, can be randomly good against like bribery style effects, or you can just cycle it off because this deck makes 1,000,000 mana. So, just food for thought. I think it may actually be like about a 5-0 match, or maybe even slightly better for Stompy. We end up playing out the Sylvan Library because we want to get up on control. We want to just draw cards. So I don't think he can do a lot of damage to me right away. So I want to beat him in card advantage, which we draw one off the top. Depending on the matchup, and we do know the matchup obviously at this point, I think, it's often right to draw cards initially with Sylvan Library, especially if you're posing a control player. We don't draw again there because really we're not happy with what we see on top. I'm going to play a bunch of mana dudes, or a bunch of guys that get mana. I believe he passes it back, and I think we end up sacking our Sakura, going up to 5 mana. Now, I believe, we keep the natural order. We put the Primeval Titan back in the deck, so we actually kind of want a natural order for that. We cast out the option of Baloth. The idea is here that we're trying to get him to counter this, so we can tap him out. He does. I think he will. And he ends up doing it. We play the Choke out, and the Choke just, makes it so I don't think he can win this game. We end up keeping an additional card, play our natural order out, and then I believe go in cast our Bloodbraid Elf. I think in retrospect, while the psychic play would have been to do the Bloodbraid first because, and this is not obviously deterministic because the deck has been shuffled multiple times at this point, but we end up hitting, what is the name of the Centaur thing that heals you or gains you a life? Yeah, Corsair Crucifix off of the Bloodbraid, which would have been nice. We get the DD combo because we're not really that close on the Valkyrie combo, and we also see Escape Shift on the top deck. I think he meant to copy the Prime Time, but I don't think it was relevant here. I don't think it would have mattered that much. We hit the Escape Shift, and at this point the game's over. We probably should have left our Thespian stage untapped so we can make it 2020, but the game's it. That's it. I mean, it's like 33 damage or something. It's something ridiculous. It's a ridiculous amount of damage. He goes ahead and scoops it in, and that's the game. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed some of these EXPO matches and some of the test matches of SugarDaddy and I working on a newer build that he's working on there for Prison. If this is a format that interests you, I hope you'll join us at some point in time for the Chain Massacre. It's run 15:30 or 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the continental United States. If you are interested in playing a 100-card Singleton, you can register for this event and possibly others in the future on Gatherling.com. Again, Gatherling.com. Or feel free to contact us on MTG Salvation over the forum, which is linked through Gatherling. And you can connect with any of the players that you see conversing in there, or ML Berlin, who typically hosts the player run event on Gatherling. I hope you enjoyed the video series, and hope you have a good holidays.